drinking your little your water pouches, and you're just floating around. It's like, how are you doing that? It looks like there's hardly any space in there. Y'all are packed in there like sardines. So I have a question for the listeners. Would you, or could you, handle, or just actually, would you be in a relationship with an astronaut? Would you be so scared and worried about their well-being that it would just, I guess, come in between the two of you, or you just wouldn't be able to get like past that? Would you show up on launch day, right, to watch them launch into space? I personally would. I would be so incredibly proud, and just like in awe of them as a person. But I get it. I get that it is a lot to put your family and your loved ones through. So I'm curious. Let me know. Leave a comment. Could you handle that? Would you be strong enough to handle the being with somebody, being in partnership, in love with someone who did something really incredibly dangerous like this, and especially in this time period in the late 60s? Could you, like, if you were Neil Armstrong's wife, like, could you be Neil Armstrong's wife? could you have handled that? Let me know. There's so many things that could go wrong on a space mission. So many like little things that need to be precise, because if you do not, like get it right, and you could create an accident. There could be some damage to the spacecraft. You might accidentally knock yourself off course, and just so many things. And it's just these little teeny things, like, tasks that you have to get right. I that kind of pressure. I know that I could go up there and hopefully not lose my mind with how tiny the space is. But I don't know if I'd be able to handle that. The pressure, this immense pressure to get the tiniest, most minute thing right. Accidentally pressing the wrong button, starting up something that wasn't supposed to happen for another mechanism that's not supposed to, be used for another 2 hours, stuff like that. It's just, again, the bravery and the attention to detail, and I don't know. I commend everybody who goes up into space. It's incredible. I also can't imagine going 3 days, 4 days into your mission, which is what happened with Apollo 13. Because at the time, it would take, I believe, 4 days to get to the moon. So they're so close. A day before, right? Day 3, shit hits the fan. And I think my ADHD, I will never say that it's, like a superpower or something, although I respect the people who believe that, that theirs makes them feel, in that way, superhuman in that way. But for me, I see there's pros and cons, and I see a pro for me is that I'm really good with crisis. And so even though I know I said, I don't know how I would handle the pressure, the immense pressure to get even like the tiniest tasks right, I think that when shit does hit the fan and things just start to spin out of their control, and I think I would be able to handle that and stay as calm as these astronauts stay calm. And I remember watching in preparation for this episode, recording this episode, I remember Apollo 13, I remember watching an interview that Commander Lowell did on some late night show. And and he said that they stayed calm, as calm as they, did, because what does it benefit them to spiral out of control and just to crash out, right? Because how does crashing out help you fix the problems that you're facing? And at the time they thought, okay, fix the problems and then keep going towards the moon. We've got a day left. We can do this. We're so close. They didn't realize that the true severity of the damage that was caused after the explosion happened in the service module with their oxygen tanks. So I agree with Commander Lowell and James Lowell in that way that, crashing out and is not going to help your situation. It's just going to make things worse. And in that moment, all you want to do is fix the problem and either continue on to the moon or fix the problem and get your butt back home to your family, to the people who love you, right? And for yourself, to get home for yourself, right? So I commend them for that. And I remember watching this scene with the explosion, and they're losing oxygen, and it's affecting their fuel cells, and it's starting to hit them. Oh, we are in the shits. We are in some deep trouble. And we get the iconic line that I learned. It wasn't actually Houston, we have a problem. It wasn't actually Houston, we have a problem. Or it was, I think it was Houston, we're having a problem down here, or something like that. Or Houston, we're having a problem here, or something like that. But we get that iconic line, Houston, we have a problem. And again, you have to keep your wits about you, because you have to be able to tell ground control that, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, what's going on, so that they can help you from Earth, from the ground, from Earth. And it's eerie. It's eerie to watch just how calm. I mean, you're losing oxygen. You're losing power. You know that you only have but so much energy, right? You have only but so much energy to get home, because now you're dealing with you're having to kind of square mentally with a lot. What's currently going on, the fact that you might die, the fact that you are now going from, well, we might be able to still go to the moon, to no, you're not going to the moon. That's a wash. We need to bring your butts home. So now you're dealing with that, like, oh no, this might be my last chance to go to the moon, right? So you have to mentally square with that, on top of now, because you're losing power, you're having to turn things off to conserve energy. And now you are in cold space. So now inside of they end up having to abandon the Odyssey because it got deeply, severely damaged in the explosion with the oxygen tanks. So they had to leave the Odyssey, go into the lunar module, which was not built for what they were going to do, basically use it to get back to Earth. Again, this machinery, this equipment is not meant, it's built for what it's the purpose, the one purpose it serves. It's not meant to then be used as like a Swiss Army knife to do 5 other things, right? And so everything is so precise and so isolated in that way. because this thing does this thing does that, then connected, those two things connect, and then it connects to this, and this does that. So when things break down, it's hard to move around and go, okay, well, we got this extra, like a module we can use. No, it doesn't serve that purpose. It doesn't do that. It's not built for that. And on top of that, it's not tested to do what you're, using it to do. They're testing it for its purpose. And I think that showed NASA in the future, like, we got to think outside the box more. And again, I'm not blaming NASA for this. Accidents happen, things happen. But especially in this particular situation, like, this is not, well, it is determined that the wiring in the oxygen tanks, like where the oxygen tanks are, was faulty. And they potentially knew about that 2 years prior, because the damage happened 2 missions prior to the Apollo 13. But so, there's a lot going on. And so you're now having to rig things up and think outside the box. And I think it encouraged that, obviously, 30 plus years of innovation and thinking outside the box. And, well, just in case this thing doesn't work, we're going to have these 3 contingency plans, or we're going to, use this in case this breaks down. And that we'll put those materials up with the astronauts so that they can use them as well. If, things stop working, or something happens, an emergency happens. So there's a lot still that was learned from this mission. And that's the important thing, that you continue to learn, because when you learn, you hopefully keep tragedies in the future from happening. You keep Apollo 13s and Challengers and Columbias from happening in the future. I mentioned before that I really appreciate how accessible Apollo 13 is as a film to the average person, right, who may not have any interest in space or anything the science part of space travel, and still keeping this, but also at the same time introducing those concepts, that terminology, the math. This is a lot of math involved, right? And so staying true to what actually happens and what these astronauts actually have to do in their day-to-day on these spacecrafts. And then, but still, it's a line that you have to toe, right? You have to stay true to the science. You have to stay true to the jargon, the terminology, the math, but at the same time, tell that in a way, translate that in a way that is compelling to somebody watching who isn't as plugged in or well versed into any of that, and help them understand what is going on. So when you say things like, we're gonna, use we're gonna slingshot around the moon, and we're gonna use the moon's force, right, to kind of propel the lunar module to Earth to conserve energy, because we don't have a whole lot of energy. So that kind of explaining it in that way is still really interesting, while also keeping the integrity of what, like, you're actually doing. I hate when movies deal with really dense science and math, although math is a science, but, and subject matter, and dumb it down in the worst way and start talking to the audience as if they are, children. And it just gets silly. And it's like, okay, well, what are we even talking about now? Like, what are we even doing? You've broken this down in such an elementary way that it's just, it's borderline insulting. I personally think so. I hate that. And there's a movie in mind that I saw that I was really looking forward to watching because I had read the book, and I wanted to discuss it on, it's the original first episode of this podcast. But after having watched the movie, I still had a great time. It's a really entertaining movie. It's an okay movie, but I did not want to discuss it in any way. I did not want to discuss it in any way. I just wanted to see it for what it was. I appreciate the visuals and the film adaptation of the novel, but that's that. That's that. We're putting that down. I did not want to go any further into discussion with that, but I don't want to be messy, so I'm not going to say the name of the movie, but I feel like you'll figure it out because it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to figure out what I'm talking about. And so I appreciate that. No, we're gonna commit. We're gonna say things like, I have completed the gimbal conversion, and then just proceed to ramble off a bunch of jargon and numbers and pitch and yaw. And there's no stopping the film to handhold and explain what any of that means. It's just, this is what happened. This is what we're doing. This is what we're accepting. We're treating you as an audience like an adult, and no hand holding. We're just gonna keep going. I didn't feel in any way that this film was overly dramatizing the situation. It took it seriously. It conveyed the severity of these men's situation. I think that everything was done respectfully. Nothing seemed to be added to the film to make it more dramatic or, thrilling or anything like that. And again, Ron Howard is so good for that. He's just he seems like such a wholesome guy, and that translates over into his films, because there's a lightness to them, but there's also it's just a wholesomeness to them as well, a positivity. And you need a whole lot of positivity when you're potentially stranded in space with your oxygen depleting. Then they get your oxygen levels steady, only to then learn that now every time you breathe, you're adding carbon dioxide into the air, and then that's going to be, a potential, killer. So there's this still a lightness, a hopefulness, a wholesomeness to the story that I really appreciate. Sometimes I can't, as much as I love Alien, sometimes I can't handle, I'm not in a mental space where I can handle watching something that's that heavy and dark all the time. And it's always pummeling you. There's not a break, to kind of just be okay, to regulate your mood. So I still really enjoy Apollo 13. It is beautifully shot. It's a beautiful film, and the performances are solid, better than solid. I remember at the time, this was critically acclaimed, and it got nominated for a lot of for awards, and it's well deserved. I really enjoyed rewatching it. I've seen it 3 times in preparation for this episode, and I enjoyed the deep dives that I did, watching the Apollo 13 documentary and watching interviews with the astronauts and learning things about them as people, things that I didn't know. And I find myself, I would definitely call myself an avid, space person, enthusiast, whatever, And there's a lot about this mission that I learned from my research, and um, I'm really glad that in the end I decided to pick this movie to discuss. I'm very glad that this ended the way it did, because I remember I brought up briefly The Challenger, but I remember when I was a kid, watching that on the news and watching that on TV. And there's a lot of ways, a lot of horrible ways this can all go. And I'm glad that all three of them got home safely. Thank you very much for listening to my ramblings. I hope they weren't ramblings. I tried very hard to stay away from side quests, to land this plane, to be interesting, to give my thoughts about Apollo 13, the real mission, as well as the film, and hopefully bring my perspective, a different perspective, different thoughts to the conversations that have been had since the mission, the real mission took off. So thank you very much for being with me today. Thank you for, if you've listened to Off-World Movie Podcast 2099 in the past on Spotify, thank you for that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments and your positivity. I'm not always so positive, especially when it's something that I really care about. I get really hard on myself. And so I'm going to let this episode off into hopefully not the void, and be listened to and engaged with by others. And I'll catch you next month when we do this all over again. I'll hopefully, I'll pick something a little lighter that doesn't involve tragedy, that's more traditionally science fiction. And until then, keep looking up, keep caring about our world, keep being good stewards of her, keep learning about herself and yourself, and be good people. Okay, bye.